and that you tell the beer makers, let's discuss alcohol-free beer. And then at the first class, all the beer makers said, that is ugly. Beer is sort of holy substance, and we produce it for 3,000 years. So who dares to touch this sort of religion called beer making? And look, there is alcohol-free beer, even in pubs. And so they somehow discovered that maybe we are not unfaithful to the beer god in making alcohol-free beer. And look, consumers are making it. Because markets do not work as follows, that consumers unite and go on the street with banners, we want alcohol-free beer. So that is not what consumers do. There was no demonstration, we want smartphones. We were not aware of the possibility of making smartphones. There was no demonstration, we want iPads. That is sort of inventor to think, maybe consumers like it. And as a state you can stimulate innovation. That is what is done in university and research, in Wageningen University, where people were brewing alcohol-free beer. And they were sort of subsidized testing. How do you do that? And so that is capacity building. And also explaining, well, then we have the Food and Drug Authority in your territory, and we look at those innovations and the results, and be aware that those authorities can move to the other pyramid of sanctioning. Because it's not a sort of pro bono activity, this regulatory state. There's a real problem. And there are really people dying from cigarettes, or from alcohol, or from medicine, or from unsafe cars, or from unsafe buildings, or from unsafe viaducts, or train stations that collapse, or all kinds of stuff your profession is dealing with. And then, when you move to the pyramid of sanctions, you meet the distinction between restorative sanctions and punitive sanctions. Restorative sanctions is that the authority commands the market actor, the company, to restore the market failure. So if there are 10,000 bottles of mineral water with poop bacteria inside, restoration means send out a truck, pick up all those bottles that are in supermarkets, bring them home and trash them. That is the restoration of the market failure. Or, if all the bottles are sold, that you try to locate the consumers. Well, with bottled waters that is not so easy, but with cars that is easy, because cars have a name of the owner in the register. And then you can send a letter to the car owner and invite them, dear sir, please come to your garage free of charge, and we will fix your car, because we discovered that if you continue driving it this way, you will potentially die because the brakes are not working, and we offer you to give you new brakes. And that is then restoration in practice. And compliance officers, we will meet them soon, are then involved of making that happen. So that is one part of the sanctioning, and it is a sanction because that costs money. Sending out a truck to pick up bottles you already sold is a sort of expense where there's no income. So it is a costly affair, and in that sense, a sanction. And then the punitive ones are more classic, like a fine, and the idea behind punitive sanctions is borrowed from criminal law, where we think that punishment, fines, jail time, has two effects. One, it decapacitates the offender. If you put someone in jail, then normally they cannot kill people outside jail, if the jail is sort of functioning.
It's really incapacitate.
Well, if it is murder, then if you put a murderer behind bars, then that murderer cannot murder again, as long as he is behind bars. And the other keyword is deterrence. The philosophy is that it stops other people from murdering, because then you end up in jail. The drama of this whole concept is that in criminology they prove that it doesn't work that way. And the human brain is much more diverse than that deterrence works in this sort of linear way. But we do not have a better concept. So we continue to work with this deterrence concept in the regulatory state in the hope that it somehow works. So at least I tell you in this class, it sort of works. When you turn into a compliance officer, you tell your boss, well, let's not disregard the rules for our products and services, goods and services, because otherwise we will get a fine. And somehow that creates sort of the atmosphere, let's comply with rules. Fines are inconvenient. But it is a real tragedy, because, for instance, privacy infringements in the European Union, or many European Union states, are fined with amounts like 4,500 euro max. Or in some states, 400,000 euro. So here we have Google with Street View as a vacuum cleaner sucking up all kinds of privacy data out of your homes, your emails, your private pictures, and so forth, storing that on their server, sending it to, potentially, businesses who then on your profile can seduce you to purchase their goods and services. And they get a fine once in a while in Germany, in France, in Ireland, of amounts like 4,500 euro, 400,000 euro, which is completely nothing for a company like Google, with 10 billion euro market value and turnover of immense of amounts, that you cannot even imagine how much money that is. So for them, 4,500 euro is not a deterrent in technical sense. So there's a little news item in a newspaper, Google gets a fine. People say, okay, let's open Google Chrome, Gmail. And so that is the real story of deterrent. But I repeat, we do not have a better model. And so in the pyramid of sanctioning, that is a crucial part, the fines. And the tendency is to increase the fine. For instance, in competition law, the fine is up to 10% of your turnover. And then shareholders start to worry, because that is quite substantial, 10% of your turnover. And so my message is, by the time you are in the driving seat of defining the fine, don't go for a 1,000 euro fine, go for 2 billion euro fine, because that is language companies want to listen to. So don't be sort of too restrictive in that sense. Yes?
But who defines those fines, especially for the internet things? They count it like with a cent, and how do they define them?
The state in the intervention in the broad sense. Because all the activities should be based on legislation. So no punishment without a legal rule. So you need to define the legal rule. So in the parliament, these fines are defined, and then regulators can apply them. So it's the legislator who then should change the law and increase the fine, as simple as that. So that's the ex ante. So the ex post intervention should apply the fines that are in the law. And if the law says a maximum of 4,500, then your hands are tied as a regulator. Yeah, you see the ex ante, ex post, and because we do not want to live in a state where the regulator ex post says, today the fine is 80%, and then tomorrow, off the turnout. Then tomorrow, I like you, it's 1,000 euro. That doesn't feel as a rule of law arrangement. And so that is then one of those principles of administrative law called legitimacy. And no discrimination on nationality, so that French companies get a low fine and American companies get a high fine, and that is in a fair market not a appropriate legal way to treat. Yes? Follow-up question?
Yeah, and for example, like in, let's say physical world, they have like defined fines, but then like in the cyber world where you see like the fines are in the billions or even like individuals, which is a few thousand, are they also written or are they based on the normal, let's say the laws?
Yeah.
Are they?
And so in principle, in all capitalist markets, all the activity of all aspects of states are based on the laws that are set prior to the activity. Because every judge on the globe will rule down any action of a government agency, regulator, authority that is not based on a legal provision. Straightforward concept of principle of legitimacy, and we would not like it otherwise. And it's also not a real problem, because we can call legislators and say, hey, we see a problem in cyberspace, let's make laws on it. And then you have, that's another class, on lawmaking. And then you have that problem, that it takes long, or that lobbying is effective, and let's not do laws, and so forth. And that's another class. Principles of administrative law. So this is the list, as a recap. No acts against the law. And so we should not say, let's not have internet, because it results in all kinds of market failure, because that is an infringement of the fundamental right of the freedom of speech. So, and if the technology facilitates freedom of speech, and then the state cannot intervene in potential market failure by blocking freedom of speech. And let's abolish transportation, because sometimes people get killed in car accidents and train accidents and plane accidents. And that is then infringing the right of free movement of people, free expression and so forth. No action should be without a law. That was your contribution. Otherwise, we are back in the Middle Ages, where depending on the mood of the king, you were punished or not. And that is not the type of state we like. And that is connected to that no act should be lacking authority. And then the other one, and so the type of action should be non-discriminative, should be on the basis of consultation, should be transparent, so we should be able to read it so that scholars can analyze it and reflect on it. So no secret Soviet courts where you get in and you know for sure that you get out as a guilty person, convicted person. And that is not something you like. No breach of legitimate expectations. And so if you allow a company to produce bottle of waters in a certain way for 10 years, you cannot say, well, we waited 10 years and now we are punishing you for all those years. Because we told you go ahead. And that is not a fair acting of administration or government. No misuse of power and proportionality. And so in the sanctioning pyramid, and those sanctions should be proportionate. And justiciability, there should be a way to challenge the acts of a state. So there should be sort of appeal possibility in an independent, not biased dispute settlement mechanism, also called courts, also called judges. And so that is a sort of fundamental principle of administrative law. Alright, let's move to the in-class assessment. So on your exam, this instruction is stated. So you get points, 15 points for such a essay question. So 50% is multiple choice questions. We talk about that next week. And the other 50% are essay questions, pre-essay questions. 2 times 30 or 15 points and 1 essay question with 20 points. So let's exercise a 15-point essay question. Students are expected to write a small essay with a clearly indicated introduction, body and conclusion. And so since kindergarten, your teachers try to stimulate you to structure your outings, your presentations, your essays. Introduction, I'm going to write about blah blah blah. The body, where you have those arguments and you answer substantively, and a conclusion. And in summary, we can say that, or this is a small essay on responsive regulation. Then, standards of excellence. So how I grade, what I look for, is whether you use full sentences, no spelling mistakes, and obviously I realize that in an exam it's handwriting, so I apply other standards to exam scripts than to computer created papers, because there you have spelling check. And so I have different standards of excellence for that, obviously. The balanced presentation of arguments. That is a critical thing. It is maybe the best learning outcomes of any higher education. And that you train yourself not to talk 3 pages about one argument, then you run out of time, and then you say, well, there are 3 other more important arguments, and there are blah blah blah, 2 sentences, time's up. And that is not a well-balanced presentation of argument. So that means that you have to mobilize your prefrontal cortex, which is about planning and risk analysis and control, which part of your brain is not fully developed into your 21st year. And so mobilize the part that is present, and that you plan your work. And that where possible, you are basing your arguments, or you're supporting your arguments with buzzwords, names of authors, legal rules, case law, and so forth, depending on your field of discipline. So that you show off the learning of this course, not what your personal opinion is on the matter. And so a professional should move into the direction of the types of words and authorities that are used in the field. And that is the difference with higher education, where lecturers ask you, what's your personal opinion? And so I'm not interested in your personal opinion on the trias politica. I'm interested in, do you get the concept of trias politica, how it is defined in science? What is the responsive regulation as presented by Mr. Braithwaite? Not your personal version. Yes?
Do you expect us to remember names?
If it is an open book exam, I expect that, because then you can check.
Yes.
And if it's a closed book exam, obviously I am well capable to see whether you understand. And then I'm not deducting any points whether you write the name of Mr. Braithwaite correctly. It took me half a year to get the spelling of his name correct. So that is not what the course is about. So don't worry about that.
Is it closed or open?
I am negotiating with the program management on that question, and I will report soon enough. And then most importantly, after finishing your mini essay, check whether you actually answered the question. I repeat, check whether you actually answered the question. Because students are emotional people, like lecturers are. So they are getting carried away with their topic. And they start to write, and they add, and they, whoa, and this is also relevant, and they describe the paradise, and forgot that they are not answering the question anymore. So that is a normal behavior, so it's my task to warn you for that. Why? Because in your future life, your boss is only paying your salary if you answer his question, not if you wrote about the paradise. And so that's a sort of skill higher education should use. Alright, I suggest we collect some energy in a break, and maybe check a few notes. And then we simulate a exam, 70 minutes after break, and then we move to the next topic. So 7 minutes for the necessary cigarette and inspiration. What is responsive regulation?